Krishna, I think we can go ahead and begin if you're.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. My name is Krishna Edattal. I'm the Director for Enterprise Solution Services here at DIR. And our team is responsible for the prioritization of cybersecurity and legacy system study, and which you all know as Pcls. And it's that time of the year when we have to, get into a lot of legislative preparation work where I know you're all busy with the LARs, EIs, exceptional items, and everything. And one of the key component in that decision making is the Pcls, which we prepare based on your inputs and then submit to LBB by October 1st, and which will be a one of the lever when the LBB and the decision makers work on the 88th legislature here in Texas. Could you move to the next slide, please? And in order to give you the overview, the webinar is for an hour and use questions on the pane. You can ask questions all the time, and we will be able to answer based on the priority. And sometimes we will keep it in order to give you all the information. We'll go with the flow, and we may answer some of the questions at the end. That is what we can. But if there are any pressing questions, don't hesitate to give it till the end. Keep it coming. And webinar is being recorded, and Mark will be able to share with you all, and it'll be also posted on the website with all the information and the slides and our videos. Everything will be shared with you as well. So this is how we are going to plan for the next 1 hour. We'll have the introductions, we'll do a quick intro, and then we'll do a quick background on how the whole thing evolved and the content overview. And we won't do a detailed demo of Spectrum, but we will give you a screenshot and we'll share you how your team can quickly go over the tool using our slides, and process and submission, and then we'll have a questions and wrap up. Next slide, please. And for the introductions, in the interest of time, I'll quickly announce who all are here today, and then when they have their sections, they'll also quickly give a brief intro on them. Then we have John Hoffman, who is a Chief Technology Officer and also Deputy CIO for State of Texas here. Myself, and then Robert Benajam, and the Enterprise Architect, Enterprise Solution Services, and Mark, who you all know as your IRM Education and Outreach Coordinator. From the Office of CISO, Nancy Renasek, our CISO, could not make it. She had a last-minute overlap. But we have the Deputy CISO of Policy and Governance, Matt Kelly, here with us as well in order to walk us through the tool and the methodology and everything. Next slide, please. So now I request John Hoffman, who is the CTO and Deputy CIO, to share the statute, why we are doing this and why you all should be, taking the next days in order to complete the questionnaires so that we can provide a detailed ask to the budget system. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Krishna. So thank you all so much for joining. Nancy Renasek and I are excited about rolling out this year's version of the PCLS. It's really an opportunity for the different agencies to be able to provide additional awareness around the LAR submissions with the LBB. A lot of times, the legislators have such an overwhelming amount of information and LARs and this, that having that PCLS report is a great guide for them to have a little deeper understanding of what the project is, what the risk is, what benefits, and it's been seen as a great tool through the process that we're going to be going on for the next year or so in developing the budgets and pushing the agenda around IT forward. We've got a lot of momentum coming through COVID in the world of IT and development and modernization. So I think that the PCLS report will continue to be seen as a great advocate for the different projects that you all are looking in modernization and cybersecurity. The teams have worked really hard. Matt Kelly has been through this process several times and is always an advocate for making it easier, faster, better process. Krishna Edithel and Robert and Mark, we've all looked and tried not to really reset from previous years and change it up too much, but just taking your feedback and making it a little better, hopefully a little easier, leveraging things that we've already seen through IRDR and other types of reporting, and making it, albeit not completely painless, hopefully a more straightforward, repetitive, comfortable approach than which as you have seen it in the past. So with that, I'll just let things get started and going through it all and kind of the background, the statute and that, but it's really great to see everybody online. I see we got 40 some odd attendees. And by the way, you know, I just want to point out, you know, John McKenzie, who is DIR's IT director, and we certainly leverage this as an agency just like everyone else. And so if you all see ways that we can improve it, let us know. It may be something that we can implement through the course of the next couple of months. It may be things that we put in for next time, but always looking for improvement. Krishna?
Yep. Thank you, John. Mark, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so just to set the stage for today's discussion, as you all know, as per the section 2054.069, as per the government code, DIR is asked to submit the prioritized cybersecurity and legacy system project report every other year. And as you can see, it's due to the LBB no later than October 1st of even numbered year. So that's how the statute, that's what we are fulfilling as part of this exercise that we will be engaged in the next couple of months. We have not set a deadline. You know, the submission deadline will be in line with the LAR deadline. And you know, once that report is in, we will collaborate and compile all the reports, and it usually ends up in about 500 pages or more, and that will be turned over to the LBB in a password protected format, and only the authorized people can go through each of the report, and we have a clear methodology to give it so that it doesn't land into the wrong hands. And only the agencies who will be able to, and respectively, we'll be sharing the agency copies with individual agencies once it is all done. Next slide, please. So this is just like the background. I won't take a lot of time because many of you are well expert in this process. It all started with the study, the legacy system study, the HB 1819 in 2014, and then we submitted the first report in 2016. The second one, the 2018, and that it is at that time we added the IRDR and the Apm assessments, the application assessment, etc. And you will see that about 430 million plus was asked. And in the last session, 2020, the third PCLS report and the 87th legislative session, we had about 898 plus million asked. And if you add all the funding, different funding sources, over $1 billion was over $1 billion was allocated to different agencies. And so it's a very powerful tool so that we can say that, look, we can be very honest with the leaders of the state and say that, look, we need this for our resources, and we need our modernization done, and we need to go out and ask our executive director, and the CIO says, get it right and get it fast. And Steve always says, you have to ask, you need to make that ask. And this is the great opportunity to emphasize and, make your ask much more stronger in the budget process. And we are here at the fourth PCLS report for the 88th session. Next slide, please. And the purpose, you all may ask, and I'm sure there are a lot of leadership changes and there'll be new people. Just for in the interest of them, we are asking, the purpose is mainly, the questionnaire provides agencies with an opportunity to demonstrate the risk potential you have and communicate that to every level, right? So we take that all what you have submitted, and then we get it through the process and then submit it to the LBB, and which will be taken, during the finance committee hearings and the entire process. And DAI will use the responses provided by you on the questionnaire along with the assessment, and we will rank stack and using the tool, and it will be provided before first, and it will be signed by our executive director, giving it to the LBB. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's where the why is, and now we'll go and talk a little bit about the Pcls content and what it is, and then I'll turn over this, I think, at this point of time, to Matt Kelly.
Hi everyone, Robert and I are going to talk briefly about the content of the questionnaire that you've been filling out relating to your projects for cybersecurity improvements and legacy modernization. So if you want to jump in, next slide, please. The questionnaire is broken down into individual parts that are focused on specific categories or factors relating to the project. Depending on the type of project, you're going to be required to fill out some sections and not some sections, depending on what it is. Projects can either be a cybersecurity project or a legacy modernization project. And if you see here, parts 1 and 2 are completed by both types of projects, whereas for cybersecurity projects, you're going to complete parts 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. And for legacy, you're just going to complete parts 1, 2, and 4. So that's kind of how it's broken down. And we're going to go through each of these parts individually, but keep that in mind when you're reviewing the instructions that depending on the project type, you'll be required to answer some sections and not others. Next slide, please. So the first part is a very important part, and this is the part where you get to paint the picture of what your current situation is and what your desired situation is based on what this project entails. Within this part, it's about 18 to 24 questions with some conditional display, and this really gets to the heart of what you're planning to implement as part of this project. You can see here we have some definitions around how to identify whether this is a cybersecurity project or a legacy project. In the past, we allowed for it to be both types of projects, but since the last time came around, management had made the decision to restrict it to one or the other. So depending on whether it's primarily for a legacy modernization purpose or for a cybersecurity enhancement, that's where you'll make that distinction on the original part here. This is also where you can describe what the project is, what it entails, what are the qualitative benefits. The more information you can provide in this section, the better it's going to be for both BIR conducting their assessment as well as the LBB to have the context for us to prioritize it effectively. It also asks some general characteristics about who is being served by this project and what the outcomes are planned to be. And then part 2, I'm going to hand it over to Robert to talk more about the Apm assessment.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Part 2 is where we get to associate business applications. And here we have a DIR definition of a business application. Basically, it's a name that we give to identify a group of functions. These can include data and applications, hardware, software, etc. Every agency may define their business applications differently, but this is just a guide for everyone. Next slide, please. So as part of the IRDR, we had to create an inventory of applications. And once that this was created, we had to determine which of those are business applications and properly assess each. So that's where the APM portion of the IRDR comes into play. And now we're at the PCLS end where we get to associate the business applications with the projects that we are developing. Next slide, please. So what's important this year is that all identified business applications should have within the last 4 years an assessment. And they must have the required fields completed in the application record as indicated here. The PCLS requirements met. Yes. So once you have defined those, so how are they associated with the PCLS project? Well, you can either directly relate them or indirectly relate them. So directly related business applications, basically, this is what this submission is about, right? We are going to address these business applications. Either we're going to replace, modernize, consolidate, improve, etc. Indirect business applications would be in the case of a cybersecurity project, right? What is impacted? Which business applications are impacted? Or perhaps you have a closet full of servers and you're running business applications off of that, and they're legacy systems. You need to move them. You want to move them to the cloud. So you move them to the cloud, but it's hosting several business applications. So they would be indirectly impacted. So indirectly related. Next, please. Here we have a screenshot of part 2, questions 201 and 202, where we identify, associate those business applications we have determined are part of this PCLS submission. And you see the arrow pointing to the lookup tab there. Once you click on that, you will be able to identify, search for and identify one or more associated applications. Same for the indirect. Matt, back to you.
So part 3 focuses on the narrative components relating to the cybersecurity project specifically. And in this section is where you get to describe what your current state is, what the challenges you're facing are, and how the project could benefit in terms of improvements, cost effectiveness, etc. And additionally, we ask what measures are in place currently to minimize the risk of adverse outcomes if a cyber incident were to occur relating to what this project is intending to protect. So again, providing additional information, if there are regulatory concerns, if there are areas of vulnerability that are being burdensome in terms of cost to maintain, whereas moving to a new platform or something along those lines could reduce the amount of manual intervention, things of those nature, where it's really just focusing on how is the situation today and what do you expect it to be if this project were to be funded and implemented. So again, more context is better here, identifying your areas of challenges and really just articulating that in a way that will be used to make decisions later on. So I encourage you to do more than the bare minimum in these sections and provide us with that information that we need to make informed judgments on how to prioritize these effectively. All right, and then part 4 is the legacy only part.
So part 4, 14 to 16 questions having to do around modernization benefits, cost benefit analysis, modernization scope, and system characteristics. A lot of questions, but not difficult to respond to. Next slide. As part of this section, you'll be able to provide a cost analysis, a business case cost analysis. Matt, I do not remember if this is included or.
Yeah, so this is within the questionnaire for this part, we request that you input a return on investment and narrative relating to your methodology for calculating that. And as part of the questionnaire, we included a link to the business case workbook, which is part of the Texas Project Delivery Framework that you can leverage as your methodology for calculating those figures. So it's required that you input what your estimated return on investment would be. We aren't specifically dictating that this be the one and only methodology that's used. However, it's a very mature calculation, so that's why we make a reference to it here, and it helps with the defensibility of what your estimations are. So that's what this is calling out.
Thank you, Matt. Next slide.
All right.
This is Matt again.
And then this is more of the quantitative aspect relating to the cybersecurity projects only. If you advance one more, I think it's going to pull up a colorful little Excel chart. So part 5 focuses on what the probability of a cyber incident occurring would be if you did not have this project funded. And we have 7 questions relating to various factors that would contribute to increasing the likelihood or decreasing the likelihood of an incident occurring. And then part 6 is focused on what the outcomes or the impacts would be if the project were not to be funded or a cybersecurity incident were to occur because of the project not being funded or implemented. And that focuses on the impacts that range from reputation to regulatory fines. And this is based on some likely kind of benchmark scoring. So we take the combination of the results from part 5 and part 6 to help us identify and prioritize essentially where you fall in terms of likelihood and impact. So obviously, if something's very likely to occur and it's going to be catastrophic, then that's something that is more appropriate to be addressed than something that has a lower risk rating relating to it. So we combine all of this together to help us prioritize these projects and rank them across the board. That's it for the content of the questionnaire itself. We are planning to have it moved into production in Spectrum by the end of this week. So next week, definitely we're planning to have that out there. So you'll be able to go in, create a new questionnaire, start filling out the information. As I believe Krishna said, the instructions are already out there. So if you want to look at the content in advance, you're more than welcome to do that. But you'll be able to start entering that information in Spectrum in the very near future. And I think I have a few slides on Spectrum for now. I'm not going to do a live demo, but I'll just point out a few things for you. First one is talking about access. So the Information Resources Manager is typically the primary point of contact relating to PCLS, and they're the ones that will go and be responsible for submitting the questionnaire. However, if you have staff or other folks in your organization that you want to have work on the questionnaire, as long as they've got a Spectrum account, the IRM has the ability to delegate a specific questionnaire to that user. If they have access, if they have access, they can be delegated to it. If you're part of the IRM group, they'll also be able to create the questionnaires. Again, inactive or locked accounts can't reset the passwords themselves. And you can contact grc@dir.texas.gov to have accounts unlocked or reactivated. We recently moved to a new identity platform for Spectrum through the Texas Digital Identity Solution. So it's actually a bit easier and smoother when it comes to the password reset functionality, but just be aware if you haven't logged in 2 years or since the IRDR, you're going to need to go through an enrollment process, which if you have an active account, you likely have already done so. But if you go to the next slide, you'll see once you get established in TDIS, you'll have access to these tiles. If you're a CAS agency already, you already have an account, and you'll see an icon within the tiles that says DIR. Currently, it's just Spectrum in there. So if you click that DIR from the TDIS portal, it will automatically log you in using SSO to Archer or Spectrum rather. And you can also go the old route. And if you're logged into TDIS, it will log you in that way. So just be aware of that. And if you have any questions or issues trying to access the system, again, feel free to reach out. This is kind of newer, so we want to make sure everybody can get to access quickly and effectively. Next slide, please. So from the dashboard here, you'll see PCLS at the top banner. If it's not on your banner and you have the banner filled with other things, then likely it's hidden kind of on the side and you have to click an ellipses to get to it. But if you're a part of the IRM group, as most of you on the call likely are, you should have access and you can click on that tile to get to a dashboard that shows you what's the status of all your requests in process, and then you can view the questionnaires and generate the new questionnaires from there. That's kind of your home base on tracking where things are throughout the process. I'm not going to get into a ton of detail here today, but we could develop some additional guidance for filling out the questionnaire, but it's typically easier just to reach out if you have specific questions. All right, next slide. So support request. If you have a new staff member or you do not have a Spectrum account, but you'd like to designate somebody to complete a questionnaire on behalf of the IRM or your organization, the easiest way to do that is using the support request function from within the portal. You just go hit on any screen. Essentially, there's a support request button at the top of almost every screen in the portal. You select add activate account and then provide that user's information. They will need to be part of the IRM group and general user if you want them to have the ability to create the questionnaires. If you just want them to be assigned to the questionnaire that you've assigned them to, then just the general user parameter will be sufficient. And then the IRM will actually need to delegate them within that specific questionnaire for them to have access. Again, you can reach out to our team, and we are providing the technical support relating to Spectrum, and happy to help get everybody set up accordingly. Next slide, please. And there's the support request button. Within the PCLS questionnaire record itself, you'll see at the top there's some general information on who the submitter is. If you plan on delegating this out, you'll see there's a field called Delegate To, and there's a Lookup Ellipses button to the right of that field. So if you click on that, it will populate the list of available users that you can delegate to. So that's going to be your active users for your organization. And then once you select that user, they will get a notification if their account is active that they've been delegated, and they can log in and then begin editing and completing the questionnaire record. You can also assign a reviewer, but that's an optional process. If you assign a reviewer, then the reviewer is going to need to approve it prior to you being able to fully submit the questionnaire itself. So again, that's optional. And if you'll see there's a question mark next to some of those fields as well. Anytime you see that, if you click on that icon, it will pop up with some help text to provide additional information about what we're trying to accomplish or get at with a given field.
Matt, Amy had a question. Can you delegate to more than one person? Since this, along with this, I thought we can, if you can answer that.
I'm fairly certain you can. It's been like 2 years since I dug into that specifically, but if you can't, then we can definitely fix it to where you can delegate to more than one person.
Thank you.
All right. So before we move on, you'll see at the very top there's a field that is calculated, and it's called the Pcls Tracking Key. It's Pcls _ the legislative session _ your organization _ the unique ID tied back to the questionnaire. And that's a very important piece that you're going to need to capture and input along with your LAR so that we can communicate between ABEST and Spectrum on which project is tied to which items that you're submitting for appropriations. So whenever you complete the questionnaire in Spectrum, make sure to make a note of that Pcls tracking key and which projects it's tied to, because you're going to need to input that key in ABEST when you submit your LAR. And that's how we can reconcile and track things throughout the budget process going forward. Next slide, please. All right, so the submission process. One more slide. So just generally speaking, this is kind of what it looks like from initiation to completing the process. The first thing is obviously identifying the applicable projects. So you've gone through your brainstorming sessions, identify whether a project is going to be applicable in this context. So does it have anything to do with improving cybersecurity or modernizing legacy systems? If so, then you're going to want to make a note that it's likely going to require a Pcls questionnaire. Once you have done that, you also want to identify which business applications are associated with this project. So which ones are going to be directly impacted, improved security, or modernized as part of this proposed project. And then once you tie those business applications to a PCLS funding request, you're going to want to ensure that you've done an APM assessment on it within the last 4 years, and also filled out the required fields in the application record, such as, is this a mission critical application? Because if you do not have an APM assessment that is more recent than 4 years, you will not be able to associate it to this project request. And then the assessment results, which are also incorporated in the overall methodology of our ranking, will not be able to be included as part of that. So it's very important that for any applications that are directly associated with a PCLS project, you want to make sure that an APM has a assessment date more recent than the last 4 years. And then again, also, if things have changed and you want to reassess that application through the APM process, that can also that would also be a good idea, so that you have the most recent information relating to that given APM assessment. So once you've done all that kind of preliminary mapping out of, okay, this is a cybersecurity project and we have these 8 applications that are going to be improved by this process, you can go in and start creating the project questionnaire, fill out if you need a reviewer, and just go through that general process of inputting the information. Once it's submitted, then the last kind of step on, at least from my perspective, is taking that Pcls tracking key and having you submit it with the LVB as part of your LAR. And then once you've actually submitted that to the LVB, it would behoove you to go back into Spectrum and then update your status on that particular PCLS questionnaire to submit it to LVB. And that lets us know that that tracking ID is eventually going to show up down the road whenever we correlate back to the actual funding requests. In some cases, as you're going through the budget process, you might go through this process and you'll be ready to submit it all. And then there's a change that happens and the project is taken off the table. So in those cases, you can either just archive this for another date, or you change it to not submitted to the LVB. I believe that's one of the statuses. But changing that status to submitted to LVB really lets us know that this has actually been requested via the formal appropriations process. And that's essentially it from the submission process. You go one more slide. Assistance-wise, we will be using the IRM list primarily for our communications. This is all only focused on state agencies, so we'll try to note that in any communications that we have. General inquiries, we've got a mailbox that goes to both my team as well as Krishna's team, pcls@dir.texas.gov. So that's more for the content type questions. And then if you need the technical support, access, password resets, you have a question about a questionnaire or need to change the status, that would be reaching out to our Spectrum mailbox, which is grc@dir.texas.gov, or you can always open a support request directly from Spectrum. We also have a web page that has additional information, a copy of the instructions, and some more. Well, that's where we'll post this recording, I believe, as well. I think that's it on those, and we can move into the questions if anybody has them.
So one question that I see from Bruce is that, I'll just read out so that we can decide who will pick it. We have been anticipating an exceptional item that is a grab bag of miscellaneous non-capital equipment upgrades, software, and some security tool services, adding up to about $850K. Should we break down the security items and put them in a separate EI backed up by PCLS submission?
So I don't think you need to re-architect your exceptional item in this case. You can have multiple PCLS questionnaires that are tied to a single exceptional item. So rather than changing it to break that into multiple exceptional items, you can have PCLS project for XYZ and tie that back to the EI. And then you could have another one that's focused on that and try to break it down through that project mechanism. I'd recommend that you talk to your budget folks about the best way to approach that. I believe you're able to input multiple PCLS tracking keys, but that might be something that our team looks into as well. Either way, I wouldn't recommend changing the formal LAR structure when you can create multiple PCLS project requests relating to it.
John McKinsey had a question. The APM assessment, is that done by the customer agency or something someone outside the agency does? So Robert or Matt, if you can answer that.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot here. The APM assessments are completed within Spectrum, typically by the IRM. Those are the business application assessments that have 4 sections to them: architecture, business, finance, and technical. Those can be done at any time. If you go into the system, you'll see a tab for APM, and we also have indicators to say when the last one was completed relating to it. I think it's been about 4 years or 2 cycles since it was kind of a required process as part of the IRDR, but you can go in and identify which ones those are and kick off new APM assessments to get those completed kind of at your convenience. I think in the IRDR, we asked whether or not you wanted to launch an APM assessment as part of the Part 4 inventory. So if you said yes to that, then I believe it generates an APM assessment once that IRDR was submitted. So you'll see a new record in there for 2022 APM assessment for those applications you indicated it for. The APM assessments, answering this question here, they cannot be older than 4 years since it was last assessed. So it's kind of in the gray area. If it was a 2018, depending on when it was completed, you may need to reassess it. I would probably go in there and look at what those dates are, and specifically the applications that are going to be related to a given project. Focus on those ones and make sure that those have assessments within that acceptable range. And that's probably how I would want to approach it. And then you can kind of prioritize updating those other ones that aren't impacted by the PCLS questionnaires or PCLS projects rather at a later date, but definitely prioritize those that are older as well as those that are directly impacted by these requests.
And John, I would also add that you can delegate the sections to different individuals within the organization.
And there, I see a question from Derek. Can this use to request new staff? I think, from a funding perspective for additional resources, if I read that. One second, let me see if. Yeah, Matt, could you take that one? The can this process means the PCLS is mainly for the projects, but the question I think is that can we use it to hire staff?
We don't have any specific rules saying that it can't be considered as part of it. I've seen that before in the past. I don't know what comes on the other end of that. I've definitely seen requests be submitted relating to it, but I couldn't tell you if they actually were considered or funded after the fact, but that's also not quite as project-based, but it wouldn't necessarily hurt to ask.
And as part of the cost analysis that you do, you can identify the staff there and indicate the cost of staff.
And while we are getting a couple of more questions, Mark, if I can just quickly show the web and just scroll down the one. Let me do that for a second here.
Krishna, do you want to share screen?
Yeah, I want to. Can I share the screen? I can quickly show.
Sure.
While he's doing that, I don't know if it was answered. There was a question on whether there were new questions in this assessment, and there are a few questions, and we are finalizing some of that.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, for that. So I'm just bringing up that link that I shared in the chat window. So this is public. This was made public along with when we announced this webinar. So this will be the best place where you can go and find all the new information that is in there. So it'll have all the set of questions captured after the initial introduction. So let me quickly scroll through that so that you get an idea. So this is how the questions would look like. So this will be, like Matt was saying, this will be in production in Spectrum, and we will make that announcement as soon as it is available. But you will see that the questions are in. Be specific in certain cases. So you can always use the information that you have already done for IRDR. You have, added something maybe after IRDR submission. So the current it is, the better to communicate in a data-driven environment we are all in. And this is a new question, the 106 and 105, and we may change that slightly. I have Brittany here from our government relations. If you have any questions around HB 4018, we didn't mix up with this presentation because the committee is being in its different stages, and once you have more formal announcement on HB 4018 from the committee, then we will have a separate discussion and messaging around this item. But at least these two questions are mainly to say or ask if a particular project was submitted as part of the HB 4018, that is the cybersecurity fund that has been given to a committee to the tune of $200 million, as you all are aware. And then if you're reporting or if you're submitting a same project for both, so so we get a clarity, and LBB can quickly filter it through, and that's why we kept these questions in here. And then these are all the regular ones, and then yeah, this is another one that we almost get the questions around the duration of the project, in a short, moderate, long term, and extended. And this time you'll also see an additional question around, I don't know where it is in this particular version, but we'll be adding something along where this is a data center related project, etc., so that our data center team or the SCS team can quickly pull over and pull that data, and then they are able to prepare for their LAR and the budgeting items as well.
There's a question on if you can download your submissions or your questionnaires prior to submitting them. Yes, most definitely. There's an export function for the questionnaire specifically. And if you have any issues with that, let us know and we can show you how to do that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So always keep a copy, so it'll be better for you to take it when you during your discussions with LBB, and you can reference and cross-check everything. I won't take a lot of time on this. One of the things that and this is a great effort. I've done it as a customer, and I've seen many people come and ask me, "Hey, look, I never got funded. Why I'm not getting funded? Why some other agencies getting more funded, or they're getting almost all their ask?" I can tell you 3 data points. One, when this was done by a major agency, I see the representatives on the call, 94.5% of their ask was funded. So that is a clear indication that the legislature and the budget board takes it, very, very seriously. And I had, Brady Horn, our government relations director, he was on the other side, and he was saying that, look, we look at to this, document very, very seriously, because when they have to make a decision between should I fund, project A or project B, and it is an elimination round, and then, you need to get that funds that you need, and this is an added lever for you to get that in. And then the last point is that, preparing and getting this done, we are all here with you. If you're stuck on any questions, any of their descriptive narration, give us a call, and we'll be able to quickly come and do a one-on-one session with your team. This is just like a broader initiatives, so that broadcasting, if you will, 40 or 50 IRMs on the call, and then we are just giving you a high level information. But we will, we're a small team, but we will come and explain it to you. We have Jennifer Boas, who has agreed that she'll be able to come and help us. Also, our own John McKinsey, and we will form a tag team, and we will come and give your team an overview, and kindly request it through that particular email that Matt had shared, and it will be on the content as well. And also the narration that, or the narrative that Matt was talking about, kindly, make it much more business, so that the business people can also understand and tell your story, why we need it. As we all know, our systems are impacting life of Texans, right? So either, in getting them to, get their educational item, getting their family and protective services, child support, everything, right? And public safety, everything is licensing. Everything is very critical for our own people. And I always say that it ties to life and death situation, and those systems needs to be upgraded, modernized, and we don't want any technical debt at all on that, and be very, very secure in this new world where we have cyber threats and everything. So kindly be upfront and list everything as much as possible. And then the last question I get all the time is that, hey, sometimes can I ask for all of it? So our question or our response would be, as our Deputy Executive Director Steve Pierre always says, you have to ask, otherwise the people who are making decisions will not know that there is a need. And that also will protect you from, we have seen a lot of challenging situations with respect to, fraud and things like that recently in the newspaper, etc. We can always avoid such things by making this, using this platform to disclose and, come forth with all issues. I know, you don't want to show, certain, will it show our tech debt and everything? I think, the moment we share with the leaders, they will understand that there needs to be more fund allocated, and there'll be more interest and more effort in getting or enlarging the pie of, or the IT budget. Unless and until we ask, there is no way for them to, for our leaders to go and increase that budget as well. So, please let us know if you need any help. And if you have any questions, we'll be here to answer that as well. Yeah, so Bruce is saying the bad case considered. This is a very, very private documentation. Glad you asked. This is only if, I don't think, very, very controlled environment. And the document is even shared within, to the legislative budget vote through a password protected format. And only those people who are certified and NDA'd, not a lot of people can see this report. And then the public report only has about 4 pages, which will not disclose any agency name, any detailed information on the budget or the project, etc. I would say only the legislative budget board and few, member committee, and they have to make a request, and we exactly track who has the document and who is doing what. Brittany, you want to add a little bit on the side where how the report is consumed from the legislative side?
Can I tack on to that?
Yeah, please.
Sensitive info component. I wouldn't include, specific vulnerabilities and, IP addresses and servers and CVEs and things of that nature. You can talk in more generalities when you're talking about vulnerabilities. That's probably just a best practice. We don't need to get down to that level of, you're running an outdated version of MySQL on a Windows XP server. That's not the level of detail that's required for it, but you could generally speak about, vulnerabilities exist that can't be remediated because this is, an end of life application, but we need it because it's mission critical and things of that nature. So, and we also treat this as confidential as possible. Obviously, we're not allowed to make that ruling, but there is a security exception, and we adhere to that as much as possible when it comes to anything relating to open records requests. So we understand that there's some sensitivity related to it, and we'll treat it as such through the appropriate and legal channels when it comes to making those determinations. So we also lock it down quite a bit in terms of sharing the full output report, and the public report is very anonymized and does not have any identifying information relating to it. It's really just aggregate figures and does not go into detail about the projects itself whatsoever.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thanks for clarifying that piece. Yeah, even people in the other departments within DAR, nobody is able to see this, and this is very locked down and very, very password protected and controlled, and we can assure you that.
We are often asked by vendors what agencies are submitting for PCLS, and we do not even disclose that information to them. We encourage them to reach out to you, potentially help you in the process of answering some of these questions, determining costs and such, but we do not disclose any information to them.
Yeah, even the legislature, right? So, we have seen in the last 2 years, from my personal experience, I can tell you, when they are in the thick of discussion, and when they need that particular information, it is delivered through the statute and the integrity of the statute. Everything is met through this deliverable. This is not leaked to anyone, and only the people who are authorized and who can obtain the information can get hands on this particular document.
Look at the public report that we have posted on our website. You can see what we provide public. It's very little. It was done. That's it, essentially. We encourage you to take a look at it if you still have questions.
And while we are expecting any question, I'll just bring the public report sample, just since this concern was raised. So this is a public report, we date it, and in all of the documents, one more point, just to be honest, they're individually customized. So it'll clearly say it is given to, if a representative, I'm not naming anyone, but we'll have their name on top and who is able to read that particular copy. And this one mainly have this 4 sections, the overview, and then how much was, what was the methodology at a very high level, and then it calls out, what, and then at a very high level, we also call out how much was totally funded, the dollar amount, and we end that public report, in that at that level, at a very high level. So you will see this in the 2021. We just call that we got 59 projects from 27 agencies, and this was the amount that was requested. So
and Bruce, on your comment that you'll be busy looking at the APM assessment. When you open up an assessment, you will see instructions provided there. And also, if you do a search on the IR website for APM assessment, you will see a couple of videos that walk you through an assessment.
And Mark, could you bring up the last slide so that we have the contact information on that for one more time so that we can project that?
I don't think that I have. I just have a thank you slide here.
Number 29 in the deck, Mark.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And Mark, see if Brittany is jumping back on the call, then we can address that concern. Whether we answered me and yeah, so like Matt said, if you have any content, review those questions that are published already. If you have any questions, if your team is preparing any team, right? You may have to reach out to different teams, finance, the operational team, anyone, or the security team. They all can send a questionnaire to this one, and we will address as soon as we receive it. And if it is a login issue, if you think you need 2 or 3 people to get access to it, put in the request today and not wait for the last minute. Then we will be all, trying to grant you access. And with the new format where we have the MFA enabled, there may be some challenges in that way. And the last link is a Pcls link that I put on the chat as well. So it will have the previous years. You can go and look at how many projects are there, what were some of the previous year questions, etc. And then you can always start preparing using the new questionnaire. So when the Spectrum tool opens, for you to fill in the information, you must have you'll have almost all the questions answered on a spreadsheet or a Word document, and that'll make your process much more easy and comfortable. And I'm quickly going to look at one more thing, and then if there are no questions, we're at the top of the hour. Let me see if
Hey, Krishna, it looks like Brittany is on the call.
yeah. So if you can let her speak on it, if you can turn her mic on. Yeah, that's on. Brittany, the question was, if you see the chat, will the Pcls report, they were actually integrating, questioning, asking about the integrity of that particular process. And we said, we will not be sharing that particular document widely. It is given to only authorized people who have to, do their job, and they're cleared and etc. So there was a question around, will once we hand it over to the LBB and the other side, how it will be handled. So if you can quickly give a high level assurance on that piece.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Brittany, you're on.
Yeah. So the legislature and the LBB doesn't share the information either. It's solely just used for budgeting purposes. So as far as like detail, we can certainly provide that if anyone needs us to. We can get more information, but I mean, they understand that this is also confidential under the same parameters that we have. I don't really know if that helps, but
Yeah, thank you, Brittany.
They are given a hard copy of the report, and it is hand delivered.
And with their name on it, right? With their specific person's name on it.
That is correct. It's a personal copy.
and it's actually password protected. Am I not?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
In case
If they
you,
request a software version, we will password protect it. Yes.
yeah, I think that's all we have. I don't know if John is around. John, if you want to, I know we didn't plan for that, but if you want to say any last minute based on what you heard, we can do a comment.
No, thank you all so much. Great questions. We've got some work to do. I'm sure there'll be more questions that come forward. The IR would like to help and support to get through this process and provide real value. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. And as Mark said, we'll share the document and also the recorded session to you all. Thank you.